When starting transformations, you need to make sure you're on this page, the notes for quadratic transformations, and you have this foldable. So what you want to do is fold it hot dog style, and then you want to be sure and cut along the lines, okay? So you have, here's your A, all the way up into the flap. So we've done this foldable before. We did it with our linear transformations, and each letter A, B, C, D tells us what type of transformation is taking place. So now you can see we've added the square, so we're going to use this foldable again for our quadratic transformations. So we'll still use, you'll need to make sure you have 4 highlighters, okay, because each one stands for a different letter. My A is going to be pink. So just as a refresher, or we'll go over it in a minute. A is pink. We'll make B green. C is going to be orange. And what you need to remember about C is, remember, it's the opposite of C. Okay, because it's negative C, so it's going to be the opposite of C. And then we have our D at the end. Mine's going to be yellow. So as we read through our notes, we need to keep this close by so we can reference it. So if we look, our quadratic parent function is y equals x squared. Remember, it's a parabola. It is just x by itself. Your vertex is at 0, 0. So for your quadratic, it's the C comma D. That's your vertex, okay? So the vertex form, if we look, if we were to use our colors again, in this case, here's my A, here's my C, here is my D. So this one doesn't have a B in it, and that's okay. We'll get into some that do, so you want to keep it with your foldable. So if A is positive, remember we've talked about this before, if A is positive, then it opens up. If A is negative, it opens down. So remember, if it's positive, it looks like that. If it's negative, it looks like that. Remember, it's the absolute value. So it doesn't matter if it's negative 3. The negative 3 just means that it opens down. With your actual A, it's the absolute value of it, and you're going to ignore the sign. So if A is greater than 1, then it's skinnier. So if A is a whole number. But if A is less than 1, meaning it's a fraction, then it's going to be fatter. So remember, this would be your fractions. All right, so think fat fractions. Whenever you have a fraction, it's going to make it fatter, all right? Then the parent function. Now when we look at our C, that's the orange one, is inside the parentheses with x, it changes the x value of the vertex. It's going to shift it left or right. If it's a positive C, then it shifts it right. If it's a negative C, then it shifts it left. And remember, it's the opposite of. So with your D, since D is outside the parentheses, so not with the X, it changes the Y value of the vertex, shifting it up or down. If it's a plus D, then it shifts the graph up. If it's a negative D, then it shifts the graph down. So these are all things we've looked at before. And if you look right here, this is the important part, that your C is the opposite of, okay? So whatever it is in the equation, your vertex is the opposite. So when we identify the C, we need to remember that. So let's look at our examples. Number 1. All right, so we have negative x squared plus 2. So what we need to remember is our deal, our foldable. The A is the guy that's out there in front of the X. And then since there's no parentheses, there's no B or C, making this my D. So what we can write down is that, remember that it's y equals A f of B x minus C squared plus D. So as we look, and we're going to identify our A, our B, our C, and our D. My A in this case, what I highlighted in pink, is a -1. And then the only other one I highlighted is my D. It's a +2. So what do these mean? Well, if we lift up our A flap, if it's a -1, so we don't have a stretch or compress because it is 1, but it's a negative. So right here, if we write negative, it reflects over the x-axis. Sorry, I guess it would help if you could see. If it's a negative, it reflects over the x-axis. So in this case, it's going to open down. And then with your D value, as we open it, so it's a +2. When it's D greater than 0, it shifts up. So it's going to shift up 2 units. Okay? So you need to start remembering this from linear. So here's my number in front of the parentheses. And then this is the number inside my parentheses. So it looks like I have an A and a C. So if you need, we could say A, bx, we should say minus C squared plus D. So we would write A is equal, B is equal, C is equal, D is equal. So because A is in front, just like that, and then C is right here, so A is equal to 2, and C, you have to remember, is the opposite. So this is a +4, which makes it a -4. So A, it's positive, so that means there's no reflection. But is 2 greater than 1 or is 2 less than 1? So remember, this is your fat fraction. So let's write that down. If it's a fraction, then it's a compress. But because it's a whole number, then it's a stretch. So we'll have a vertical stretch by 2. And then for our C, since it's a -4, if it's a horizontal translation, so if it's less than 4, it's a shift left. So shift left 4 units. So let's go ahead and do 1 or 2 more. Looking at number 3, if we write above it, y is equal to a bx minus c squared plus d. A is what's outside your parentheses. B is in front of the x, inside the parentheses. C is right there. And then we have the D value. So it looks like this time we have 3 of them. We have that A is equal to 1/2. B, there is no B. So C, it's the opposite, is -7. D is equal to 3. So using our foldable for the A is a fraction. If it's a fat fraction, it's a vertical compress. So vertical compress of 1/2. If C is a -7, it's a horizontal shift left because it's negative. It's less than 0. So horizontal shift left 7 units. And then D, C and D should be pretty easy as long as you remember C is the opposite. D, if it's a negative or it's positive, it's going to be up. So we'll shift up. Shift up 3 units. Okay. Let's do one more. So y is equal to a bx minus c squared plus d. So my a is what's in front. There's no b. C is what's inside. Then we have D is the last one. So A is equal, B is equal, C is equal, D is equal. A is equal to -3. There's no B. C is a +2. D is a -6. Remember, C is the opposite of, okay? You might want to write that on the outside. It's opposite of what it tells you, okay? So for A, it's a -3. So if it's a negative, it reflects over the x-axis. So reflects over x-axis. And it's a whole number, so it's a vertical stretch, okay? Vertical stretch of 3. C is a positive, so that means it's going to shift right on the positive direction. So shift right 2 units. And then D is a -6. So since D is negative, it's going to shift down. So shift down 6 units.